A morning like any other. He sat at the dining table, his back slightly hunched forward. The first light of day brushed over his silver hair, casting a gentle glow on the clear glass of water before him. She stood in the kitchen, her familiar hands placing the kettle on the gas stove. No words were exchanged. Yet the atmosphere wasn't cold, just silent. There was no anger, no argument, nothing overtly identifiable as distance. It was just that yesterday he didn't ask her if she had slept well. She didn't gently touch his shoulder while pouring his tea as she usually did. Could it be that the love had faded? Or perhaps their bodies were simply slowing down. When steps become less steady, people often hesitate to take initiative. When breaths grow shorter, conversations may dwindle. When hands feel colder, sometimes no one reaches out first. Not because the love is gone, but because there's a fear that they might no longer be someone worth loving. After 60, many things change, but not love. What changes is how people express it. They no longer say, "I miss you," no longer call each other after work. They simply place a hand gently on the armrest, waiting for the other to sit beside them. But if both are waiting, who will take the first step? In couples who have lived together for more than half a lifetime, distance no longer stems from arguments. It arises from silences, from glances that no longer linger, from hands placed side by side but not holding each other. And sometimes all it takes to bridge that silence is a small gesture. A glass of water, placed just right, at just the right moment, enough to remind the other, "I'm still here, still seeing you, still waiting for something, no matter how small, for us to reconnect." Some things don't restart with an apology, not with a bouquet or a trip away, but with something very small, like a warm glass of water with a touch of baking soda. She didn't tell anyone, had no grand plan. Just one day she read a shared note. Baking soda can support blood circulation, help reduce cold feet and numb hands, especially in people over 60. She thought of him, the man who gently rubbed his knees every night, but never complained, who walked more slowly, but never said he was tired. That morning, she prepared a warm glass of water, added half a teaspoon of baking soda, didn't ask if he wanted it, didn't explain, just placed it gently next to his usual plate of boiled eggs. He looked, didn't ask, but drank. And then she continued, the next morning, and the morning after that. No miracles happened immediately. He still walked slowly, still read the newspaper in silence, but on the 5th day he said quietly, "This morning my feet feel warmer." It was the first time in a long while that she heard him speak about his body, not in terms of fatigue, but with attention. The following week, he was the one to stand up first, grab his coat, and say, "Shall we go outside for a bit?" She didn't know if it was because of the baking soda or the regular habit of a morning glass of water, but one thing she was certain of, that small act had brought him back. Not just his steps, but his gaze, his presence, just a glass of water. But in a world that had been silent for so long, it was like a message without words. I'm still here, still believe that something small can awaken everything. And then, when he began to smile gently, started to walk longer, began to recount old stories, she knew nothing grand was needed, just the repetition of love in a simple and consistent way, just baking soda. But sometimes healing comes from the very place no one notices. I didn't say anything. I just replaced the fruit plate and added a small glass of water next to it. Mrs. Eleanor recounted, her voice as gentle as if recalling an ordinary morning. Mr. Jim, her husband, is 74 this year. He used to walk the dog every morning. Since retiring, he stopped going, not out of laziness, but because he felt his legs growing weaker, especially in the mornings when the weather hadn't warmed up yet. Mrs. Eleanor noticed, didn't ask much, just changed a few things. One day, she removed a few banana slices from his morning plate, replaced them with some soft avocado slices sprinkled with chia seeds, and instead of pouring milk as usual, she placed a warm glass of water with half a small teaspoon of baking soda next to him. He looked, didn't react, drank it, and then read the newspaper as usual. This continued every morning. No one mentioned it. But a week later, as he put on his coat preparing to go into the garden, he asked, "What did you do that made my feet feel warmer?" That question made her pause. She turned back, looked at him, and just smiled. No need to answer. After that day, he took the initiative to walk the dog again. Not far, just around the neighborhood. But she noticed his steps were steadier. And that afternoon, he sat longer beside her on the porch. No need for many words, just he stayed by her side longer. Mrs. Eleanor didn't think she was curing an illness. She just wanted him to feel that he was still being cared for. And strangely, a small act like preparing a warm glass of water revived things that had once been silent. It's not that baking soda heals emotions, but it made me do something regularly, gently, but with full intention. And perhaps that consistency told him, I still care, still want him to feel healthy, still want him to step out the door and come back to me. You may have heard, after 60, men often withdraw, not because they no longer love, but because they feel they are no longer worthy of love. And that sometimes starts from the body. According to studies, when men pass the age of 60, blood circulation begins to slow down, partly due to a decrease in nitric oxide, a small molecule but plays a significant role, helping blood vessels dilate, bringing blood to the hands and feet, the heart, and even to places needed for feelings of closeness, initiative, and vitality. When nitric oxide levels decrease, the body not only feels colder, but confidence also diminishes. The man who used to open doors, take the initiative to ask, take the initiative to hug his wife after dinner, now begins to step back, not because he doesn't want to, but because he no longer believes he has the strength. And this is where baking soda, a seemingly small thing, enters the story. When mixed with warm water, baking soda creates a mildly alkaline environment in the stomach, helping to neutralize acid. More importantly, it indirectly supports the circulatory system. Many studies have noted that in some people, baking soda helps improve blood pH balance, supports vascular function, slightly increases endogenous nitric oxide levels, thereby helping blood flow better, especially in areas prone to cold like hands and feet. And when blood circulates better, hands are no longer cold. That man dares to hold his wife's hand again. Not because baking soda is a miracle, but because it's a starting rhythm, helping the body remember how to respond to life. And when the body begins to respond, emotions follow, slowly but full of hope. That's when the man no longer sits still, but looks up and asks, "Shall we take a walk today? Would you like to drink with me today?" And the wife, still the one preparing the water every morning, will smile, because she knows he's coming back. Not just in his steps, but in his gaze. In the early years of their love, she often waited for him on the porch, holding a cup of tea, eyes full of anticipation. Just seeing him ride his bike home, all the day's fatigue would vanish. She didn't study psychology, didn't read books on marriage, but she knew at that time the thing he needed most was someone always waiting for him. Later, when both had gone through more than half a lifetime together, that role remained. But instead of waiting on the porch, she waited in his gaze, to see if today he was tired, quieter than usual, if there was something unspoken that needed to be seen. The wife, at this age, doesn't need to know all the cholesterol levels or blood pressure readings, but she has something no medical book possesses, the intuition of enduring love. She saw his steps slowing down, saw his hands cold every morning. She didn't panic, didn't urge him to see a doctor immediately. She just changed a few small things, the type of fruit, the way she seasoned the soup, and prepared a glass of water with baking soda, placed next to his plate as a very natural part of the day. Because she understood, emotions don't need to be treated like an illness, but need to be invited through patience and gentleness. She's not a doctor, nor a psychologist, but she's the one who listens to the very small changes and responds with actions instead of words. Science can point out that baking soda supports circulation, improves mild inflammation, but only the wife understands. Sometimes circulation needs to start not just in the blood vessels, but in the emotions between two people living together. A morning glass of water, an unhurried glance, a question, "Did you sleep well last night?" can do more than any prescription. And so, the wife, the life partner, is the most silent, resilient, and important emotional caregiver in the journey together after 60. No one calls it separation. No one leaves the house. No one lets go of anyone's hand. But then, one day, you realize you and your life partner are living under the same roof, yet separated by a silence. Not because the love is gone, but because it has been a long time since they loved each other the way they once knew. People often think that distance comes from hurtful words. But for couples who've been together for many years, distance doesn't arrive with noise. It arrives in the quiet absence of what used to be small, everyday things. No more thank you when someone pours the tea. No more asking, "Did you sleep well last night?" No more gentle touches while watching a movie together. No more walking side by side in the garden after dinner. No one talks about our birthday anymore, just individual ones. No more arguments. It may sound peaceful, but there's no urge to make things right. No more searching glances in the morning kitchen. No more picking out fruit together at the grocery store. No more laughing at old stories. No more little surprises, even just a pastry next to the flower vase. No more warm voice from the bathroom. "Honey, is there a towel?" No more one adjusting the blanket for the other late at night. And finally, no more whispered words before sleep. These 13 gaps didn't appear in a single day. They crept in silently, not sudden, just like mist. A little more each day until you look at each other and yet no longer see each other. But because they arrived so gently, they can also be erased with equally gentle actions. A small question each morning. A hand held while stepping out the door. A glass of warm water, not as medicine, but as a way to say, "I still notice you." Baking soda can't erase every distance, but when passed through a hand long used to holding another, it can become a signal for two people to move closer, bit by bit. After 60, the body begins to change, but not always with warning. Things slow gradually, heavier steps, shorter breaths, colder hands each morning, and often the man says nothing. He just steps back a little more each day. Why? Sometimes the reason is very simple, but not easy to notice. In older men, testosterone, the hormone linked to energy, initiative, and a sense of masculinity, begins to decline. Alongside, blood circulation weakens. Blood vessels lose flexibility. The heart beats a little slower. Hands and feet lose their familiar warmth. And like an unnamed cycle, when the body slows, emotions dim too. There's no longer the urge to reach out first, no longer the drive to invite his wife for a walk. Not because he doesn't love her, but because he no longer feels strong enough to show it the way he once did. That's where the distance begins. Science calls it circulatory aging, but in daily life, it shows up as small questions no one asks anymore. Shall we eat together? I'm going to rest a bit. Stay here with me? And because no one speaks up, no one knows they need to be drawn back. The wife notices him quieter. The husband thinks she doesn't need him like before, so they both stay silent, thinking it's respectful, but really it's a missed chance. The good news is, the body, though slower, never loses the ability to respond. It just needs the right signal. A small act, like mixing a glass of warm water with baking soda, may not instantly boost testosterone, but it sends a quiet message. You're still cared for, still worth tending to, and you can still begin again. And when the man begins to drink it regularly each morning, blood flows better, feet grow less numb, and the courage to reach out comes back. Gently, but enough to melt the silence. Distance in marriage after 60 rarely comes from a big event. It doesn't crash down like a storm. It comes quietly, steadily, like dust building up over the years. And sadly, most don't notice until it's too late. No one meant to hurt anyone. It's just that one day he didn't say thank you when she poured tea. The next, she didn't ask if he slept well. Then one morning, no one suggested a walk, and slowly, those little things vanished from their rhythm. Distance starts with the absence of what once was habit. But if that distance formed from forgotten small acts, then connection can be rebuilt through repeated small acts. Just one action, repeated with care and honesty, can become the bridge to warmth thought lost. And a glass of baking soda each morning is such an act. It's not a cure. It carries no miraculous promise. But when the wife places that glass beside the plate, not as a health hack, but as a way to say, I still see you, I still want you well, then that glass begins to shift the rhythm of the home. He drinks, says nothing the first day, looks at her longer on the third, asks quietly on the seventh, is there something different today? A habit begins, a rhythm is set, and when his body realizes it's still being cared for, his heart begins to open again. Sometimes to mend a relationship, you don't have to open your heart right away. Just turn on the faucet, stir gently. Place that glass next to the morning paper. Repeat every day, because renewal, after all, doesn't come from a grand gesture. It comes from the courage to love again in a small, steady way, like before. When it comes to science, many older adults think of it as distant, meant for doctors, researchers, or the young. But the truth is, some studies exist, just to encourage you to keep living well and closer to each other. Take baking soda, for example, a small white powder sitting in most kitchens. Everyone knows it cleans and deodorizes. But few know that, when used in the right dose and regularly, baking soda can support blood circulation, aid urinary health, and reduce mild inflammation in the body. A study from the Journal of the American Society of Nephrology showed that in people with chronic kidney disease, using sodium bicarbonate, baking soda helped slow the decline of kidney function, not just because it neutralized acid, but because it reduced strain on the entire circulatory system. Another study from the Journal of Immunology noted that baking soda can trigger a beneficial immune response, reducing low-grade inflammation, something very common in older adults, especially with symptoms like joint pain or slight swelling in the hands or knees. For digestion, baking soda helps ease reflux and maintain stable pH in the stomach, indirectly helping older folks eat better, sleep deeper. These findings aren't meant to make you believe in science, but to remind you your body is still alive, still healing every day if you give it a small chance. A glass of baking soda isn't the answer to everything, but it is a gentle message. Your body still holds the ability to come back, and if you return to yourself, I'll be right here, ready to walk with you. Science, when told well, is no longer dry. It becomes light shining into things thought extinguished. Like the moment when he, after months of silence, today asks, "Would you like to go to the garden with me?" She doesn't remember the exact day, just that the weather was warm, the sun rose early, the wind wasn't too cold. He sat on the balcony, eyes gazing distantly at the trees out front. Back slightly hunched, hands resting on his knees as always. No movement, no morning paper like before. She went into the kitchen, made the water like usual. Half a teaspoon of baking soda, just warm water, stirred gently to stay clear. She didn't think much, just did it as part of the morning, like how they used to pour each other tea in their younger days. This time, she didn't place the glass on the table. She carried it out to the balcony and placed it in his hand. No words, just placed it in his hand, the same hand that once gripped the steering wheel, cradled their firstborn, fixed the roof without a ladder. He startled slightly, maybe because the water was warmer than expected, but instead of his usual nod of thanks, he looked at her, a very long look. That gaze, she hadn't seen it in months. Not a questioning gaze, not even one of gratitude, but a look, as if he remembered something important, as if something in his heart opened just from the hand that brought him the glass. Then he asked, "Shall we go for a walk?" That was all, a gentle question. But for her, it felt like spring had just arrived on the porch. How long had it been since he asked anything? How long since he wanted to go anywhere? How many mornings had she made tea, cooked meals, made the bed? In silence, not knowing if he noticed. And with just one morning, just one glass of water, just one gaze, she knew he had returned. Not from far away, but from within himself. No need for many words, no need for promises. Just that look was enough for her to know they could still walk together, still hold hands, still call each other back after a long, quiet time. People often assume that when a man becomes quiet, touches less, initiates less, it must be because he's lost interest. But the truth, especially after age 60, is often the opposite. It's not that he no longer loves, but that he fears. He's no longer worthy of being loved the way he once was. When his hand begins to tremble slightly while holding a glass of water, when his breath shortens after just a few steps up the stairs, when his knees resist each morning step, something inside that man quietly contracts. It's not just the body weakening, it's how he feels about himself. I'm not strong enough to catch her if she slips. I'm not sure I could stay balanced if she hugged me by surprise. I'm not the man I was when she chose me, and so he withdraws. But he doesn't walk away. He's still there, still eats breakfast with her, still listens, still does the usual things. He just no longer takes the first step, because deep inside is a fear that if he reaches out, he might disappoint her, that if he extends his hand, he might not be able to hold on, that if he tries, she might realize he's no longer the man he used to be. That's why even a small gesture from his wife, like preparing a glass of baking soda water, can be so moving. Not just because baking soda helps circulation, warms hands and feet, but because that glass is a silent invitation. You don't need to be as strong as before. Just take one step. I'll be waiting. When his blood begins to flow better, his body warms, and from there, courage returns. Not the kind of heroic bravery, but the gentle kind that's just enough to say, "Would you like to go for a walk? Let me grab the basket for you. How about we make tea a little earlier today?" Men after 60 don't need loud cheerleading. They just need a wife patient enough to remind them in small ways they're still worth loving, and that they never lost the role of a husband, they just forgot it through a few cold winters. Marriage isn't always balanced. Sometimes one person has to take more steps while the other stands still. But if those steps are taken in love, then no one loses. The wife who once cooked, washed, planned every trip no longer needs to do big things. Now she chooses one small act, repeated each morning, making a glass of water with baking soda, placing it gently on the table, saying nothing, not waiting for thanks. But in that act, she's saying, "I still see you as the man I chose. I still notice you, even when you don't look back. And if you feel you've lost something, this is how I help you remember." Maybe the husband won't react right away. Maybe he just drinks it out of habit. But trust isn't awakened with speed. It's awakened with consistency. When a good deed is repeated long enough, it becomes a rhythm, a circle that can gently pull someone back. Someone takes a step, quietly, gently, but close enough that the other no longer feels left behind. And then the husband begins to respond with a small question, a little initiative, pouring a cup of tea, a slower gaze toward his wife. Seemingly trivial things, but in long marriages, these are signs of renewal. So, if you're sensing a growing distance, don't wait for him to take the first step. Maybe he just needs someone to believe he still can. And that person is you. You don't need to redo everything. Just start in one place. Tomorrow morning's glass of water. One hand extended, a gentle touch on the shoulder. One question, simple as, "Shall we try walking today?" Sometimes it only takes one person's bravery to keep the other from feeling alone on a road they've traveled so long together. I don't remember when it started, just that every morning, next to the newspaper I always read, there was a glass of water. Warm, with something different, but not unpleasant. I never asked. She never said anything either. She didn't ask if my knees hurt, didn't ask if I woke up at 3 a.m., didn't ask why I no longer walked the dog. She just faithfully placed that glass there every morning. I started drinking it, out of habit, expecting nothing. But one morning I stood up and realized my feet weren't as numb. I took a few extra steps into the yard, then a few more to the fence. The next week I said, "How about we walk around the lake?" She wasn't surprised, didn't ask anything, just nodded, grabbed her coat. Her hand is still small, just like always. But that hand that day held more strength than anything I can recall. Now I still keep that habit. Drink the glass every morning, not just for health, but because it reminds me someone still wants me well. Someone is quietly waiting for me to take a step. No one's asking you to redo everything. No need to overhaul your entire life. No need to dig up the past just to find what once was. Just one glass of water, prepared in advance, stirred gently, no explanation. Place it next to his usual cup of tea, or by the chair where she always sits each morning. Say nothing. Don't expect a thank you. Just wait for a different look. A smaller nod than usual, but one that weighs as much as an entire unspoken "I see it. I understand. Thank you." The journey of reconnecting after 60 doesn't have to begin with tears or long talks. Sometimes it starts with a small, steady act, genuine, patient, tender. And if you've ever done something small that made the distance between you disappear, share it. Your story might be the spark someone sitting next to their loved one needs, not knowing where to begin. If you've come with us this far, chances are someone is on your mind. Someone who once held your hand tightly on your wedding day. Someone who rushed to cover you from the rain. Someone who once felt very near. But now, because of time, quiet gaps and slower bodies, they're sitting still, just a few steps away, but feel farther. You can't undo everything that's past, but you can choose one small act to open a new path. Today's invitation. Tomorrow, make a glass of water with baking soda. Place it gently on the table. No need for an introduction. No need for medical reasons. Just place it and wait. This isn't a test. It's an invitation. An invitation for the two of you to start again, with no promises, just presence. And if you want to continue this journey with us, leave a comment. I've started with a glass of water. Who knows, your small action may be exactly what someone else needs. And if you've done something that made the other smile again, hold your hand again, walk again, tell your story. Don't keep it to yourself, because somewhere out there, a wife or a husband is still waiting for a reason to begin again. Tablet.